Hello, welcome, episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to this, Hugh Croft here. If you don't know me, Talk Sport, ITV Sport, mainly is where you find me. Alongside me, Jordan Jarrett Bryan, Channel 4 News, Black Academic in the building, and assistant editor of the Mirror newspaper. Needs no introduction, Darren Lewis is here as well. So this is episode 1. You might be tuning in, trying to find out what it's all about. So let me briefly tell you what we're going to be trying to do on this podcast. This is, in my opinion, the evolution of a friendship group, a WhatsApp group that's popping off every time the football's on, and some wasted conversations in there, and too much time wasted in there. I thought, listen, guys, let's take this to the streets, okay? Let's get this out there. So it's simple. We're going to try and be ourselves the whole way through. No pretenses, anything like that. We're just going to be our usual selves as friends. And hopefully you enjoy it. We'll try every week to talk about a couple of big issues in sport. We'll also try and talk about something big in society or culture, art, whatever it might be, something that we've seen and experienced. And we'll try and do a little bit of fun at the end of every podcast as well. Something that we don't know coming. We'll explain it in more detail a little bit later. But listen, hopefully we are some of your favourite journalists, favourite sports journalists, and we're going to bring on more names, more faces, others from the industry, others from the world of sport along the ride with us as well. So welcome. Thank you for being with us. You're one of our day ones. Let's call it that. But we're going to start in football anyway. We're talking now a couple of days after the Carabao Cup final. Not going to mention who supports who, but some teams won, some teams lost. Liverpool beating Chelsea, and Gary Neville on Sky calling Chelsea £1 billion bottle jobs. Now, they took Liverpool, who were top of the Premier League, all the way to extra time, 2 minutes from extra time. From the end of extra time, Virgil van Dijk getting the goal. There was controversy in the game, but really it's that statement from Gary Neville that we're going to dissect. Are Chelsea £1 billion bottle jobs?
I think, first of all, there's two things to kind of mark out before we get into it. The first one is that a lot of people take issue with the phrase bottle job. A lot of people get triggered and offended by the idea that professional footballers don't give 100% and they chuck it in. I'm not that guy. I personally think that the phrase bottle job is totally apt in certain situations to certain players. It doesn't trigger me. So that's the first thing. But more important than that, I think we've got to define what a bottle job is. Let's define what we mean by a bottle job, because there's differing reactions to what Gary Neville said depending on how you interpret what a bottle job is. So a bottle job, as I understand it, is a player or a team that, in a position of superiority, succumb to fear and basically chuck it in when really they have everything within them to get a job done. That for me is a bottle job. You've bottled an opportunity to win something from a position of superiority or strength. And the reason why I think this is apt towards Chelsea's performance, definitely in the extra time period, was that the momentum seemed to be going towards them. They had the more senior players or more experienced players on the pitch. Overall, I know they had Van Dijk, Liverpool, and a couple other senior players, but overall they seem to have the more seasoned players. It was in their hands, and there was no impetus to want to say, you know what, we're never going to have a better opportunity to beat Liverpool in a cup final. It's been a terrible season. This could salvage it somewhat. And as I interpreted it, Gary Neville is saying they threw that away. They didn't grab the opportunity. They threw it away when they were well in that match. So I think the tag was strong. £1 billion bottle job team. I get it. It's a great Sky Sports line. Jamie Carragher was saying yesterday, I think that will be what they're tagged with until they win something big. I kind of agree with that. But I also agree with the sentiment of what Gary Neville, I believe, was trying to convey.
He did apologise afterwards, Gary Neville, or basically say on Monday Night Football, you know, I was a bit over the top, I was a little bit zealous, it was a little bit too much. It will stick. Klopp's kids versus the blue £1 billion bottle jobs. Liverpool beating Chelsea in 3 Wembley finals in the past 2 years, beating them on penalties in the FA Cup final and EFL Cup final in 2022. So, are they bottle jobs?
Well, I want to ask a question because JJB set out really well at the start of what he was saying, that whole bottle job concept and what it is. So by that same metric, were Arsenal £1 billion bottle jobs last, well, not £1 billion, but were they bottle jobs last season? They were 8 points clear, at one point 11 points clear. I don't think they were, because as you were saying, footballers, yes, they have it in their own hands, but if they don't have the experience, the know-how, the nous, and a variety of other things can go badly for them, and it's not of their own making. But if Chelsea are bottle jobs, were Arsenal?
So the first thing I would say, when people talk about Arsenal were 11 points clear, they also forget to mention that City at that point had 2, I think even 3 games in hand.
Well, yeah, but once those games in hand were played out, I think it was 8 points that they were ahead. They slipped up against Southampton.
They did.
And a couple of other very beatable teams.
I'm not going to push back on the idea that Arsenal are accused of being bottle jobs. I don't fully agree, but I'm not going to argue it either. I think there's a difference whereby Arsenal, I think the real reason they succumbed to City was inexperience. I think they just had a lack. I think the reason they didn't win the title was because when it really mattered, they were in uncharted territory.
So what's the difference between them and Chelsea? That's an experience as a team. Yes, they are individually expensive players, but as a team, they've never won anything
within a game than it is a 10-game stretch, even with a 5 to 8 point lead.
Really?
Yeah, I think Chelsea winning the League Cup on the weekend in the position they were in is an easier job than Arsenal hanging on to an 8 point lead against a team that we know.
I think getting over the line as a concept in sport is an incredibly hard thing to do. You're a sports presenter, and you've seen a lot of sport. Everyone watching and listening to this will have, for example, Andy Murray. For years and years and years tried hard in tennis, couldn't win Wimbledon. Eventually he did manage to get over the line, but there was always someone too good, too experienced, with too much nous, with too much in their armoury. If you look at golf, Rory McIlroy, for many years, the bridesmaid. Again, too much experience, too much know-how amongst the other competitors. But I think because we live in a social media age where we need something pithy to go with, and listen, I'm not going to criticise anybody. I'm a red top tabloid journalist, so I understand that whole concept. But I just think sometimes when you put together something pithy, it doesn't actually appreciate what goes into committing yourself to wanting to overcome those odds. And if you don't overcome those odds, it doesn't make you a bad team. It doesn't make you a bad group of individuals. It doesn't make you a bad manager. And I look at Pochettino, for example. I look at the respectability he gave to Southampton, that he gave to Spurs. Before he arrived, they were a mess. When he arrived, they had the joint best defensive record in the country. They had the following season, they had the best defence outright. They got to a Champions League final, and he kept them in the Champions League when the odds suggested they had no right to be there. So I don't like throwing around terms like bottle jobs, whether it's to Arsenal or to Chelsea, because I think it's just inexperience that cost them.
Nah, man. You can call people bottle jobs. There's different types. Just to go back to how we define it, like for example, it's not necessarily about the experience. If you're an overwhelming favourite, that same Chelsea team, if they were playing a championship side in the cup final and they lost, they would have bottled it. So it's not just about experience or age or anything like that. It is about quality ultimately, and you can be a bottle job in a one-off match, or you can be a bottle job culturally, and there's a trend. So certain clubs fit that aspect for sure of over years, regardless of team, regardless of current team, that club has shown us that when, and for me, this is how you define the bottle job. I don't think it's about really like being better than the other, but I think people do. Like, I'm overwhelming favourite, I lost, bottled it. I was 10 points clear, I came second, bottled it. I'm just telling you that how people can define bottle job. There's different ways in which you can bottle it. That's all I'm saying. But for me, it's about a trend rather than a... So if Andy Murray lost one final and he was heavy favourite, people could say that he'd bottled it. I wouldn't say that. But if he kept to losing finals...
Well, Chelsea have lost 6 in a row now, so there's a trend there.
Whoa, not this Chelsea team.
But that's a trend as a club. That's what I'm saying. I think if they are a club Well, he called them a blue £1 billion bold
So
job.
it's referring to this squad, not to the last 5 years, the previous 5
Well,
years.
listen, they've been worth billions of pounds. In
Exactly,
They
Darren.
have
Come
done.
on,
They
they've
have
always been
done.
worth a lot of money.
But the facts of this particular case are that this squad is very expensively assembled, but it's been put together over the last 3 transfer windows.
I don't think they bottled it, and I wouldn't call them that because Liverpool, in my opinion, even with kids in the side, are overwhelming favourites to beat them. They ain't good enough, Chelsea. It's that simple. So for me, are you crazy?
I
In that final,
I don't know.
In that final, even though for me at the moment Liverpool are the best team in the country, better teams would have won, would have beaten Liverpool on the day. Are you telling me that they wouldn't? Arsenal would have beaten Liverpool on Sunday.
Of course.
And Man United might have had a chance of beating them.
But I that far. But
Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying that Chelsea weren't. It's not. They didn't score a goal.
But even
Man United might have scored a goal.
Even though Chelsea aren't good, Liverpool are bringing on teenagers making their debuts in a final.
No,
they
bro,
weren't
there's
making
talent
their
there.
debuts.
There's talent there.
McConnell had played for Liverpool before. Bradley obviously is a wonderful player, played for Liverpool before. Bobby Clark had played, the son of Lee Clark, he played
Sure, I'm
for
sure there was
before.
a couple that came on for their first game.
Second or third.
No,
all
Jayden
right,
Dance had played for them before.
All right, a couple of games under their belt. If I'm Chelsea, I'm thinking, as bad as we are, we have to handle this.
No.
We have to.
Oh,
They're a mid-table team, bro. They're a mid-table team.
So if Chelsea played an under 21 Liverpool team, would you expect Liverpool to win that match?
Let me say something. If Liverpool were playing, against, let's pick a roughly mid-table team in the Premier League. But
West Ham.
Are they roughly mid-table?
That's a bit harsh.
Okay, yeah, a little bit. If Liverpool were playing a mid-table-ish team, say they're playing Wolves, right, and they started with 3 or 4 kids, you'd be expecting Liverpool to win still.
If Liverpool started with 3 or 4 kids.
Yeah.
In amongst their regular 11.
In amongst their regular 11.
Of course.
So it wasn't like there were 10 kids out there.
There was enough kids, minus Salah, minus Jota, minus Alisson, minus Trent Alexander. There's
But at the
a
end of
lot
the
of
game-
senior players not there.
At the end of the game, didn't Chelsea have a younger average?
But I think that's why they
Age.
did, but more experience.
Well,
They were more experienced. They might have been young, but they were more experienced.
I think that there is a wider issue here, which is that in English football, we have a generation, or generations plural, that have been brought up to believe if you put young players into a team, you're throwing the game. There isn't, and that's why there is so much incredulity around the fact that Liverpool were winners with 4 players, 3 of whom were teenagers still in the team. In Spain, in Italy, you can play young players and people understand you're trying to bring through, you're trying to evolve the team. But here in England, you're thrown the game if you play a Bobby Clark, a James McConnell, a Connor Bradley. And even in the preceding game in midweek, where Liverpool played some of the younger players, and they had obviously that midfield of McAllister, I think it was. Who else was in that midfield in midweek? They had a couple of the players who normally wouldn't have started because they've got so many injuries. People said, looking at that, it was against Luton, and people said, looking at that team, they're there for the taking. It's not as strong as it was, but there is a culture of winning at Liverpool that is very, very strong. And I've always felt money can't beat culture. If the culture is good, if the discipline is good, if you have that weaponry on the pitch, then you've got a really good chance. And I think the thing with Chelsea that actually beat them was the lack of a striker. They had 5 big chances in the 90 minutes compared to Liverpool's 2. If they had had somebody to put them away, they would have won. They don't have enough responsibility, but again, that comes from experience, and you're only going to get that if you're in more moments like they were at the weekend.
I would say, I think one of the key things is those kids at Liverpool, albeit they're young, but young Klopp came into the club, they were probably in the academy, 10, 11 years old.
100%.
So all they know really in terms of getting towards senior football is how this manager wants them to play.
Exactly.
So
he's not just throwing them in, and there is this misconception that he went, oh my gosh, well, we've got lots of injuries, let's just get a couple of kids and plug them into the academy. He understands, and he works with Alex Inglethorpe in the academy, who is capable of being able to step into a moment like that and acquit themselves well. And I think it's incumbent on us to kind of reshape our thinking in terms of the contribution young players can make to a first team. What has he given them now that those players have played? He said to the senior players, if you don't perform, I have no compunction about putting these younger players in. He said to the younger players, you are part of this squad. Pochettino did that when he was at Spurs. He was using kids from the academy. Harry Winks at Leicester now and unappreciated by Conte and Mourinho. But when Pochettino was there, he started against Real Madrid. That's how much he thought of the young players from the academy. And I think it's just a lesson for us all to reshape our thinking. At a club where the culture is good, you can play young players, teenage players. Their discipline levels will be high, their consistency will be good, and what you will have is a situation where there is no dip in quality.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. One thing I would just quickly add is that let's not pretend that he put in ready youngsters at the expense of underperforming senior players. Those senior players weren't there.
Oh, of course, but my point is that if now that they've been there, now that they've performed, if you look at the way that the goal came about, there were tricks and flicks on the left-hand side from a couple of the younger players. They forced the corner, from the corner Van Dijk scores. And it's the confidence that they have to do all of that. I don't disagree that had the senior players been available, they would have played. But now that those younger players have played, have acquitted themselves well, they give Klopp options for the future.
Yeah, of course.
You mentioned the striking department at Chelsea. I was just thinking, we were watching Brentford last night. Ivan Toney, big name, of course, after the ban. Is he the man for Chelsea? Or what should they do in the transfer market? Let's just say that.
No,
that's not the only area
I'll tell you what,
issues.
reframe that. If you're Ivan Toney, right, you are Ivan Toney, would you go to Arsenal if they come knocking, or would you go to Chelsea, seeing as there's a void there that if you can acquit yourself well, you go in and
I'm 28 if I'm Ivan Toney. I'm talking about money now. I'm sitting down at the table. This is the Jerry Maguire moment, baby. Show me the money.
I disagree slightly with that.
Why?
Because you're going to get paid Arsenal or Chelsea. So surely it becomes more about, I'm 28, I want to win something.
But it depends, man.
I'm going to get paid at Chelsea or Arsenal.
I don't know, man. So if there's a 50 grand a week difference, and there might be, Chelsea might be the more desperate. If Chelsea are telling you they're giving you 50
all right, if there's a 50
more
grand difference, but you think I've got a better chance of winning the Champions League or a Premier League at Arsenal the next couple of years versus Chelsea in the mess, where are you going?
Very quickly.
I'm Ivan Toney. Is this the game you said you were going to play?
No. Just
50 grand difference, Arsenal, Chelsea.
Listen, looking at the two teams, Chelsea are a work in progress. With a good striker, I think they'll make a lot of progress. Somebody's conferred the opportunities. But Arsenal are further forward. Arsenal playing Champions League football. I'm 28 years of age. I'm not getting any younger. If I work on the basis of which club could I make the greater contribution to, given the ammunition I'm going to get, I'm going to Arsenal.
I mean, this is beside the point because it's his career and he's going to make the right decision. But if I'm a black player from London, I'm going Arsenal. Is that wrong to say?
Why is that significant?
Just a football club that Ian Wright, David Rocastle, Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, like my age group, what we've grown up with. And it's a decent Arsenal team right now. You're going to be a legend. You're going to be able to go where you want in London.
Some people would say Didier Drogba. Some people would say Marcel Desailly.
Would you rather be an Arsenal?
Desailly! He was there for a year!
Would you rather
You're really
be
clutching there.
I don't mean disrespect to Chelsea, but you'd rather be an Arsenal legend. Wouldn't you rather be an... I'm
an Arsenal fan, yeah.
Listen, to
me, it's not necessarily about the legendary status. It's more about the fact, could I achieve my ambitions at my age if I were to go to Chelsea or Arsenal? Well, Arsenal are already in the Champions League. They're in the latter stages of the competition and the business end of the Premier League. So I'm slotting into a side that's further forward. And what I think in general is that if you're a new signing at any club, you're much better off signing a club that is on an upward trajectory rather than a club that's in trouble, because they're not quite found their best team, I would argue, and they're still really in a bit of a mess, Chelsea, whereas Arsenal are flying. And if I'm slotting in there, I got a better chance of doing myself justice.
If I'm being unbiased, I genuinely think that Chelsea's the better fit. I think he suits Chelsea more than Arsenal. Not saying I would necessarily have him at Arsenal, but I just think if I take my Arsenal goggles off and I was looking at which team can I see Ivan Toney in of the two, I just feel like he feels like more of a Chelsea player.
But if you're 28 and you want to play Champions League football,
Yeah. Well,
then
Chelsea's not on the table then.
Chelsea aren't in there. And I'm not just saying that to disparage them. They're not even in the Europa League. And if you look at the top 4 or 5 teams in the country, those teams are all going to strengthen further.
Well, I was thinking we could throw United, even Liverpool, if they lose Mo Salah, in the mix of teams that could be options looking for a forward in the window.
Right, so listen, that kind of brings us on to the title race anyway, because we're talking about these teams that Ivan Toney might be able to go to, and really, at this point in time, we're looking at the top end of the table. Right, he's not going to go to Manchester City, but when you're looking at Arsenal and Liverpool right now, is it a 3-horse race?
Yes,
sure.
100%.
And are all 3 teams definitely really in it, or is someone going to bottle it?
See what he did there. It's a good question, because when people talk about title, we've argued about this before, people talk about title contenders at the start of a season or even in November and December, and my rebuttal was always, a title contender is a team that with 10 games to go, I can close my eyes and genuinely see lifting the title. So when teams are like top of the league at Christmas, for me, you could still not necessarily be in the title race, because I don't see you as a title winner. Or only 3 points off Arsenal and they're second, so we must be in the title race. I heard that a lot from United fans last year. Yeah, but I can't see you when it really matters being there. You could be 10 points off the top in November, but I could still see you as a title contender, if that makes sense. So where I think you're going with this is, do we genuinely think, can we close our eyes and see all 3 teams, or one of the 3 teams, lifting the title? And I think the answer is yes.
3 points. Sorry, the top 3 separated by 2 points with 12 games to go.
It's not laughable for me to believe that Arsenal could be the champions in May. Equally City, equally Liverpool.
When you close your eyes, do you see... do you honestly... Do you know what? I just closed my eyes and I actually saw Patrick Vieira with that title, with Arsene Wenger standing behind him. I'm not even going to lie, that moment on Sky, that's what I'm seeing right now.
I do see.
But I don't see an Arsenal player this season
I do see
with Mikel Arteta.
I do see. I think there's lessons that have been learned from last season's bottling, as some people have labelled it. I see a team that's better. I see a team that has different ways of scoring goals. I see a team that defensively, I believe defence win titles, goals win games, defence win titles. Defensively, we're strong. I see a team that seems, and I'm hoping, can straddle the Champions League, however far they go in that, and their Premier League duties. Factor that in with Liverpool, I think they're going to go deep in all competitions. That will take its toll at some point. They're missing lots of key players at the moment. Manchester City are the team that are the smart money, right? I think the smart money is on Manchester City. I get that. That if you're going to put a gun to my head, I'd probably back Manchester City. But your question is, do I genuinely believe, with no bias and no jokes, Arsenal being Premier League champions? That's not me hoping. I genuinely can see them coming above Liverpool and Manchester City. Well, to win it, they'll have to.
Of course,
Put your case forward.
For the first time, I think the waters have been muddied for me, because for a long time I could see only Liverpool winning it. I could see Liverpool. I felt it was between Liverpool and City. But I look at Arsenal and I have to respect Arsenal, because they've got the best defence in the Premier League at the moment. They've got the best attack in the Premier League at the moment. They've scored the most goals. All this debate during January over the criticism that Arteta had for not bringing in a striker and not having a second way to play, and yet there are players who are stepping up and taking responsibility, and they've scored the most goals.
Doing the strikers though. This mustn't make us think that Arsenal don't need a striker now.
No, of course.
I think they still need to get a striker.
And actually, even if they score the most goals and don't win the title in the summer, I do believe they should still go out and buy a striker.
Even if they win the title, I think.
Even if they win the title, absolutely. Yeah. Because the reason for that is obviously they'll be in a stronger position to get a striker, not just in negotiations, but also in terms of that player needing to fight his way into the team rather than the team being beholden to him and his ability to score goals. In terms of who could win the title, it's a hard one, because I'm not really that swayed by the fact that Liverpool have lost players. The culture at Liverpool is strong, and sometimes when a culture is that strong, you find a way to win. Because even the less experienced players buy into the direction of travel in terms of the mentality at the football club. City are the ones for me.
So can I just push you a little bit on the Liverpool thing?
Sure,
there?
go on.
So as we get into the home straight of the last 10 games of the season, I'm with you and I agree with you regarding culture, and I think that does count for a lot. But you still need players on the pitch, and I think some of the players will come back in the next few weeks, no doubt, but some of them won't. I saw a couple of players in like leg braces, and that says to me they're a month away at least from back. So when it gets to the last 10 games of the season, and you've got Europa League, potentially FA Cup and Premier League, the game starts stacking up. Do you not have concerns that culture's great, but you need bodies on the pitch?
No, and I'll give you 3 reasons why. The 3 key players in the team for me are Van Dijk, Alisson and Salah. Right? During the AFCON, Salah's missing for 8 games. They win 6 of them. They scored 22 goals. Right? Caoimhe Kelleher comes in for Alisson in the final, pulls off some outstanding saves to convince people and, most importantly, the team that he is very capable in big moments. Van Dijk scores the winning goal and doesn't just score one goal.
I'm saying time when the games are racking up, the pressure racks up.
All of those players.
Pressure, you don't want to talk about pressure, bro.
Right, we're doing all right so far.
You wait till my answer. Don't know about that.
I just think in the Liverpool side, there are players. First of all, the fact that they're in it is a triumph of recruitment because they ripped up the midfield, they replaced it with a new midfield, and all of those players have come in and done well. You look at that forward line, even without Salah, even without Jota, they still have that ability to score goals. And again, lots of people at the time thought, why bring in Gakpo when you've got Salah and Jota? Why bring Diaz when you've got Gakpo, Jota and Salah? But why bring in Núñez when you've got Diaz, Jota, Gakpo and Salah? But he knew exactly what he was doing, and it's at this moment where all of that is coming to fruition. The one thing you said that I do agree with, the title race doesn't really begin until March, April. Because that's when it really matters. If you're still thereabouts, then you're thereabouts for a reason. But am I worried about Liverpool? No, I think they'll be the stronger four. I think they are so strong that they can withstand the loss of so many players.
I think they need to allow the Europa League if they're going to win the Premier League. I think if they go to
I'll tell you a quick story.
About injuries and players, and you don't want to play Thursday night and Sundays and travel.
I'll tell you a quick story. In what was the year they won in Chelsea won in Munich? 2012. Right? That year, I think they were playing in the FA Cup semi-final at the weekend. Chelsea were playing in the FA Cup semi-final. I want to say it was that year. It might have been. But basically there was one year.
We're talking about Champions League.
No. But my point is that they had 2 big games. One of them was an FA Cup semi-final at Wembley. I remember being there at the time. And then they had a big Champions League game in midweek. And we were all of the opinion they can't possibly play the same players in both games because the game in midweek was so big. But that's exactly what they did because big players want to play in big moments.
You're missing 2 points. One,
you're not Chelsea in 2012, bro.
Well, no, but you're saying that.
3 trophies, and also Chelsea. Did they have this many injuries then?
Not this many injuries, but my point to that is that when you have that momentum, that bit between your teeth, I don't think you're worried about what the workload or you want to play. You can't wait for the next game.
I'm with you if you've got somewhere near a full strength squad.
I don't think we need a full strength squad. I think we'll have this conversation day one today. We'll have this conversation in 5, 6 weeks, 10 weeks time, and I'll be able to say to you, I told you so. Okay. Liverpool will still be there at the business end.
As we talk here today,
I think Liverpool will get to the business end, but I think City will win it.
Jordan?
I think City win it. I've changed my mind. I think City win it. But I don't think it's hilarious that Arsenal could win it.
Yeah.
I think it's my point.
The Premier League and Premier League fans are just scarred by Man City over the last 6 years.
What do you think?
I just look at the run-ins. I think everyone's capable, to be perfectly honest. If I'm Liverpool, you just look at the games, let's put it that way. Arsenal, I think, have the easiest run-in. Like, I'm including Chelsea as one of the harder games they've got left. Hold on.
There's no such thing as an easy run.
Easier.
Who did they lose
I didn't say easy. I said they have an easier run-in. Okay, let me say the fixtures, and then you can tell me who's got the hardest run-in, okay? Arsenal, in my opinion, Chelsea is one of the hard games they've got at home on the 16th of March. Man City away is obviously the next game after that. That's going to be probably a title decider for many people. Tottenham away.
United away. That's in our last 4 match of the season.
All right, but United away.
But it's away.
It's not tough. If you're going to win the league, no, with respect, are you mad? Getting duppy by Fulham. If you don't go there and win, you don't deserve the title. I'm sorry.
That's a fair
I'm
point.
sorry.
That's a
You
fair
don't
point.
deserve to win the title. You think Man City are going to go to Man United and lose? Come on now.
Fair point.
Man City have Man United at home at the weekend. Liverpool away could be a title decider as well. Arsenal at home. Aston Villa at home. Tottenham away. West Ham on the final day might be a tough one. Maybe not. But then you look at Liverpool. Again, it's just a Thursday night, but the fixtures aren't too bad for them. Man City at home. Brighton at home. That might be a tricky one. They go away to Manchester United. Spurs at home. Villa away. Wolves on the final day might be tricky. With nothing to lose, they've been a decent side this season, but I think, if it's to win the title, Liverpool will beat them.
Do you know what I'm doing? While you're talking, I'm looking at Arsenal's run-in for last season.
They're bottle jobs. You don't have to worry about that. The only thing that I'll say about Arsenal, this is the only thing that I say about Arsenal, because when it comes to the pressurised situations, this team is still scarred. When you go 1-0 down at the Emirates in a team that you're expected to win, all of the crowd feel that fear of, oh my God, we're going to throw it away. And all of the players feel that fear of, oh my God, it's happening again, we're going to throw it away.
Well, we'll see.
That is an emotion
we'll see.
that you're yet to mature beyond.
Well, we'll see, because my first answer was, I feel like there's lessons that have been learned, I'm hoping, from last year, whereby if you do get to 6 games to go and you do go a goal down after 10 minutes at the Emirates, that we don't think, oh my God, it's happening again. That's the lesson that I'm hoping has been learned.
I think it has been learned, because two seasons ago, you missed out on the top 4. And I remember doing a game where Ramsdale came out afterwards and said, look, we've learned from the scars of that season. And the following season, obviously, they went to compete for the title. But how did you... And this is why I don't set too much store by run-ins, because the teams that Arsenal slipped up again last season, they drew against West Ham, they drew against Southampton, they lost against Brighton. Sometimes you can look at run-ins and think, oh, they've only got this mid-table side or that mid-table side to play.
But this is the thing, the levels are, Man City are probably only going to be dropping points in a run-in against incredibly good teams. You've got to be a great team.
Well,
so you can look at their running and say...
Hugh, Man City are near invincible at home. They haven't lost at home in front of their own fans since November 2022. Do you know who they lost against? Brentford.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes we can look at teams and maybe dismiss them because they're not the powerhouses.
But the World Cup.
I was going to say as well, timing is important as well.
They checked out in that game. So I'm not going to lie, everyone was.
They checked out. They did check out.
Whatever reasoning you might give, the facts are that we time and again we dismiss smaller clubs that are peril.
The most important game for me is the Liverpool City game, because Liverpool have to win that game.
Yeah,
Liverpool win that game, then it's all up for grabs.
City have to win that game.
Yeah, I think City will take a draw at Anfield.
City, a couple of seasons ago, they won the league by a point. Liverpool would have won that year had they not drawn at home with City. And vice versa.
But the reason why I think City will take a draw is because I think they would fancy themselves to beat Arsenal at home. If they can get 4 points from Liverpool and City, they'll take that right now.
Arsenal's record, the numbers, again, I don't just want to sit here and say, I think. The numbers, best defence, best attack, the most goals from set pieces. They're a well-organised side. There's this presumption that because City always see off Arsenal, they're going to do it again. But Arsenal from set pieces are so strong.
Timing. I think we're going to that period of the season now where you can beat your Burnleys 5-0, your West Ham 6-0, and we're playing well and they were deserved wins. Let's get to the last 8-9 games of the season where you're juggling Champions League, quarter-final against a Madrid or whoever it may be, and on the weekend you've got Palace on at 12:30.
Yeah.
That's when I want to see if... Do you know what I mean? That's when I'm judging this Arsenal team. Not now. Now the stats look great.
Listen, once Porter did a number, it's over anyway.
Listen, Porter
when
gets
Porter go 1-0 up in the first half and everyone's
laptop regime.
Yikes!
No.
Yikes!
We're
We're going to see anyway. I think
It's the next round I'm more concerned about than the next leg. No,
I think it was important anyway to set our stall out. Listen, hopefully Arsenal. I think for Arsenal as a football club, just to get to those big games where you're highly competitive against the best teams in Europe, even if you don't win the Champions League, would be incredible. For me, it's a failure if you don't get to the semi-final. Because I think you're that good. I do think you're that good.
I agree.
I said it before, just to end this conversation on something that's unrelated to the title, but Arsenal have a better chance of winning the Champions League this year than in 2006 when they got to the final.
Ooh.
Without question. When you look at the other teams in the competition, Arsenal are third favourites this year behind City and Real Madrid.
Yeah.
With the bookies.
But we
in
also
2006.
But we also had Sol Campbell, Thierry Henry.
I know that.
A talented Fabregas.
Okay, but look at the Juventus
Ashley
squad.
Cole.
I'm just gonna say to you now.
No, yeah, I
Go
know.
to 2006. Look at Juventus. Look at Bayern Munich. Look at Real Madrid. Look at Barcelona.
Their squads were so-so.
Look at Manchester United, who came bottom of their group that year. But look at their actual team.
Yeah.
And there were high quality teams, half a dozen plus, in the Champions League that year. And this year, I just don't see that level of quality. But that ends our football chat anyway. We'll break here. We'll be back in a second because from here on out, it's cultural, it's intelligent, it's otherworldly. Stay with us. We'll be back after this. So we're going to mix up the rest of the podcast with a bit of fun and a bit of seriousness as well. We'll get the seriousness in here, I think, and go to my erudite friend to my left, Darren Lewis.
Roll neck time.
To introduce to us, it's not really his topic of the week. Like I say, we're always going to do something that's commenting on what's going on in the real world. It might be your bills, it might be mortgages, I don't know, it might be something to do with culture, art, like I said earlier. But this week it's very much political.
Yeah, it is political because I just think it affects us all. So a few days before we broadcast this, recorded this, a politician called Lee Anderson talked about the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and the people protesting against the conflict in Gaza. I hate calling it conflict because basically it's people who are being killed. And it's a cycle of violence. I want to recognise it's a cycle of violence because you can't talk about what's going on in Gaza without talking about what happened on October the 7th as well in Israel. But as we all know, anti-war protest has gone on for decades, hundreds of years. And the right to protest is time-honoured, it's legitimate, and it's important as well because it's heartbreaking to see people losing their lives. So Lee Anderson is the previous Tory party vice chair, and what he said was that the people demonstrating are Islamists, and that the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, given the capital city away to his mates. Right, both of them both comments very, very offensive. You know, Islamists, for anybody who doesn't know the term, basically refers to Islamic fundamentalists. Now, I would not suggest anybody, middle-aged white women, young black men, children, people of all races, many of them Jewish among the people demonstrating against seeing the loss of life and the scale of the loss of life in Gaza. I don't think any one of them are Islamic fundamentalists. They're just people who just don't like seeing death, destruction, starvation, and all of those things that we've been seeing on TV, hearing on the radio, reading about in our newspapers. But there seems to be this move to dismiss those people as either extremists or supporters of terrorism and supporters of terrorist groups. And none of that is true. But that's the movement of people like Lee Anderson and other people like that. And it's given rise to this whole debate about Islamophobia in the Tory party and on the far right of the Tory party. And I've written in the Daily Mirror about the fact that the Tory party and the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak can't even address and call it what it is says a lot. But the second thing is that it's not a new debate, and lots of people who are shocked by it, they forget that Boris Johnson, 2019, he referred to women wearing the burqa as letterboxes, and he was given the opportunity by Beth Rigby at Sky News to apologise for it, and he refused to take the opportunity and dial it down. And for me, that gave the green light to all sorts of other MPs on the far right of the Tory party in the government to be racially offensive. And that's what they've taken over lots of years. And last year, when Suella Braverman, at the time she was the Home Secretary, she gave one of the most divisive, bigoted, reprehensible speeches I can remember for years, the kind of thing that I heard growing up in the 70s and 80s, the kind of thing you would have heard from Enoch Powell. And there were people who were criticising Lee Anderson and trying to distance themselves from his remarks, and they were in the room clapping at the time. So we're almost trapped in a kind of terrifying race to the bottom at the moment, because we've got people who are in charge of the country who want to deny people the right to say, look, I don't want to see people killed in my name. And we've got a rise in anti-Semitism, we've got a rise in Islamophobia, we've got a rise in racism, anti-black racism. We are in a very, very febrile moment in this country. And look, I love my sport, I love my entertainment, I love all sorts, but these are important issues that we have to be aware of and that we have to talk about and we have to find some resolution to.
Suella Braverman could easily end the year as the leader of the Conservative Party. Former Home Secretary you mentioned, she was writing in the Daily Telegraph, she says, Islamists are now in control of Britain. They've bullied our country into submission, she says. The UK is sleepwalking into a ghettoised society, threatening free expression and British values.
And a former London minister, Paul Scally, said that there were no-go areas in Tower Hamlets. You know, like, I work in Tower Hamlets and in Birmingham. I work in Tower Hamlets. I work at Canary Wharf. You know, it's utter nonsense. But I do just want to go very quickly back to what Braverman said, because it's really, really important, and we all know this. There is, when Rishi Sunak became PM, there was this move to say, oh, what a wonderful triumph for diversity. Diversity is not demonizing people who look like you or making life worse for people who look like you. People who think it's a triumph for diversity if somebody brown goes into the highest office in the land is a good thing. It's very naive. Because if you are going to go into that post and make life worse for people who look like you, then you're just the same as the people who preceded you.
The thing that gets me is just the inability to call it what it is when it's Islamophobia. Like, I don't get why it's so tough. Rishi Sunak was asked about the comments of both Braverman and Lee Anderson. It was basically like, I don't want to make the situation worse. And I'm like, well, by not being able to say what this is, I get it. If he did, he would have put both MPs in a position where he couldn't bring them back. He needs Braverman because he wants to hold on to votes onto the right of his party, but that's in itself underlines the issue. It's because that is another green light to Islamophobia, because it's basically saying the Prime Minister of this country, you know, she's saying that Islamists are in control, but it's clear that in fact she and a faction of their party are in control of the Prime Minister, because he can't even call a spade a spade. He can't even say, yeah, that was Islamophobic and it was incredibly offensive. He can't even say that. Why? Because he is so weak as a politician that he needs people in that part of his party to at least, and don't think Braverman individually will be one of those people giving him support, but the people that share her views want to think, is this guy representing me?
Well, sorry to cut you, but that's the reason why he won't call it. I understand why he won't call it out. It's an election year, so he needs to try and curry as much favour amongst, even if it's a fan base.
But he took the whip from Lee Anderson.
He did. But what I understand why he didn't call it out for what it is, I don't understand why he hasn't just sidelined the two of them completely from the party. Like, call it. I understand why he won't come on TV and say this is X. I get why he won't do that. But I don't get why he just sidelined them completely. I think Darren has really articulated the problems of the politics of the issue here. But I'm also just wanted to kind of comment on the humanity that I'm seeing. And I mentioned that it's an election year. And some of the language that's been used by senior politicians is just so not subtle. It's just blatant in what it is now. We're at that point now where frontline politicians can just say stuff that is just like so offensive for votes. And I want to put the spotlight on the public, because these people are voted in, right? They don't just get there for no reason. They're voted in. So when you have politicians, whether you're red or blue, that are saying things that anyone with half a brain can tell is divisive, is offensive and problematic at best, and you still lend your support to that individual or that party, I'm now looking at you more than I'm looking at Lee Anderson, I'm looking at Suella Braverman. I get why they're saying what they're saying. What I don't get is why you want to support somebody who doesn't have the humanity to understand there are groups of people, whether it's black people, whether it's Muslims, whether it's Jewish people, who are suppressed wherever it is in the world they may be, or having day-to-day difficulties living in a country like England. Why you don't understand that why what they're saying is impactful, and you giving your vote to those individuals is problematic. That's my concern. In a year where it's looking like Labour are going to be the next government, how they govern, we'll see, and there's issues with the Labour Party that I have as well. But people that can still hear Lee Anderson say what he's saying and still just in the face of defiance decide, yeah, it wasn't that bad.
A lot of people agree. A lot of people agree, one.
Well, that's an issue. That's an issue in itself.
Two, a lot of people will look at other parties and say, well, your record on race isn't great.
No.
So who are you to talk?
Yeah.
And there's been people within the extreme left of your party who have said massively anti-Semitic things. So why you would want to vote for either of them is then the question. So I agree with you in that regard. But if you're talking about the one party, well, people will say, what are my options?
I think what they've decided, what they've succeeded, the politicians have been doing, certainly the government have been succeeded in doing, is polarizing the debate to such an extent that people see it as an either or. My biggest fear around this is that there are real world consequences for people. And I've lived through periods of time where we've seen explosions of violence on the streets as a result of what the politicians have said. That whole xenophobia, that whole looking sideways at your neighbour who you would otherwise get on well with as a result of what the politicians are saying, and the way that they're framing things and the way that they conflate supporting a ceasefire with being a supporter of terrorism. And what they aim for is the people who don't look at the detail. They're not aiming for the people who look at the big picture, because they know they can't reach those people, because those people are well informed enough to know that they're talking nonsense. What they're aiming for are the people who only look at the sound bites. It's a very straight out of the Donald Trump playbook. They're looking for the people who can't. They take their news from the net, not necessarily from traditional media or reliable sources. They get the bits, the little bits, and they think that's enough to be going on with. And that's not a criticism of those people, because obviously everyone's very busy and we live in a very different world when everybody waited and got the newspapers of a morning and had a read of it before they went about their business. But the danger of that is that people are not, in some cases, that they listen to some of these politicians and they act on the basis of what they say, the way they frame things. And we also live in a digital media world where those politicians are able to flood social media with certain things.
And sorry to cut you down, and more than that, they have channels. They have their actual broadcasters now.
I was getting there.
These politicians, it's not enough that they can give offensive and divisive quotes to mainstream newspapers or just tweet something offensive. They actually have a 3-hour show on mainstream TV and cable TV where they can steer a narrative for 3 hours the way they want. That's the difference now as well. They have they have mouthpieces to their audience that is beyond just an article in a paper or a 140 character tweet. That's also a problem.
And see, in the 70s, you had people like Enoch Powell who could either do a speech or print leaflets and put them through people's letterboxes. Now you have people like Lee Anderson who can get onto your phone.
You can watch these channels on your phone on the way to work.
And even though in the old days you would say, well, let's sideline them and let's not give them a platform. When Suella Braverman gave that speech last year, it was broadcast live by our national broadcaster to the country. I remember being at work and seeing it on the TV and I'm thinking, imagine you're an Asian kid, a black kid, a Jewish kid, a different kid watching this and thinking, or a family who lives in a febrile area. Imagine what you must be thinking, the terror that you must be in, being fomented by people whose positions and whose job it is to actually keep us safe, dial down the rhetoric, and instead she's whipping it up. And that's where we are. It is a race to the bottom. And I think that people like Lee Anderson, he might have gone, but it's what he represents. It's the party he represents that puts us all in danger.
Any solution?
I think a change to the voting system and the way we have different types of parties, I think is the way out.
No, but when it comes to us being able to call it what it is, and the politicians being able to speak freely, rather than I know what you
us being the media.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that changes anything. I think they say something offensive, media calls it out for what it is, but ultimately the change we want is a government that is compassionate and competent. And that's only going to happen if we have politicians who are compassionate and competent. They're only going to get elected if we, the people, have a party to vote for who is compassionate and competent. So I think calling it out is needed and great. And I work for a broadcaster that does, I think, a very good job in doing that. And you work for a paper that does front pages that do that very well. I don't know how that tangibly changes things, personally.
I think, well, the first solution is at the ballot box. Everyone has the power in that regard. And you would hope that people do use that power, because obviously there's never been a more important time, I would argue, in the last few decades than now.
So to cut you again, but to Hugh's earlier point, some would argue, okay, I'm voting really between Labour and Conservatives. Is there a significant difference?
Well,
would be the question some would ask.
Yes, and with some justification. But what I would say is that, as appalled as you might be over certain issues relating to Labour, and certainly I've raised for a long time that my concern at the lack of new black male Labour prospective candidates to fight the next election. Yes, David Lammy's done a great job, and Dawn Butler and all of the others have done a terrific job, but where are the new, younger people who represent this city that we're recording this in? London, Birmingham, Manchester, all over the country. Where are they? So there are those issues relating to Labour. But I think the alternative is to allow a party to retain control that puts us all in danger, that continues with the inflammatory rhetoric, that wants us to hate somebody who's white, who's Asian, who's Jewish, who's Muslim, who wants us to not want to show any compassion for our fellow men. We've never been about that, and we should not be about that as a country.
My major fear is actually that it gets worse if the Tory party are the opposition, because then they feel free
to say what they want,
and to build the pillar of their core movement around that divisive stuff.
But they'll feel free to say,
because they don't have to have policies. Labour get criticised for not having a true policy. You're in opposition, you don't have to have a policy. All you need to do when you're opposition is oppose.
Yeah.
Say something that negates what the ruling government
that's true,
are doing. So I actually think,
but then on the flip side of that,
in charge.
But the flip side of that is that although they have the power to oppose, they don't have the power to impose. They don't have the power to introduce laws that demonize people, that leave people to... I need to be careful with my words. But they don't have the power to do certain things that leave this country in the tinderbox state that it's in at the moment.
Okay, we're not making any money from this podcast, so I don't want to get Darren a P45 at his actual job.
Yeah, just keep it moving.
So let's just keep it moving. And listen, that was about as serious as this podcast will ever get, and obviously it's an election year, and so politics is going to pop up from time to time, but it won't always be that when we hit our, society-focused topic of the week, let's call it that. To end is our final feature. It's that first feature. If you want to recommend one, if you want to ask us a question, we're always happy for audience involvement on this podcast. But for the first week, we haven't got any audience yet. The first feature is called Talk Me a Talk.
Talk me a talk.
And Jordan Jarrett Bryan has the floor. We'll rotate this throughout the podcast, so it won't be him every week.
Nope.
But he gets to introduce it as our honorary first.
All right, so Hugh sent me the challenge of trying to find a story or a video, something that was interesting, funny, outrageous, or just worth discussing briefly. So I want to talk about...
By the way, we don't know.
No, they don't know. They don't know.
Darren and I have no idea what he's about to say.
So I want to talk about some women who are outrageously humiliating their men. I'm talking about the artists Omale and Usher in particular. So Omale is an artist that I never heard of until about 2 weeks ago. I think he's an Afrobeats artist. I think he was here in the UK doing a concert.
It's a guy. Oh, I see.
It's a guy, yeah.
Okay.
Now, this went viral, but he has some sexy R&B, I think Afrobeaty type of music. Forgive me if I've got the genre wrong, but it's on that kind of wavelength. So he invites this young lady from the crowd to come up. The big part of his show is that he gets a girl on stage, and then they do a little grind and dance thing, and then the screen comes up so you see a silhouette of him. Basically, I don't know kind of how deep the language I can go on this podcast right now, but it gets a little bit graphic, right?
Okay.
Now, this woman, she's been invited to the concert by her boyfriend. He's there. So it's gone viral now, this video of this guy watching his girl happily volunteer to go up on stage. She knows what's coming, yet her man is right there, and the guy's face.
You've seen this.
I saw the video. He's just leaning on.
He's leaning on the front
railing, just looking at his
gutted.
Yeah. But it's a moment where the whole room's like also. He's feeling more embarrassed because there's a room full of people.
Of course. So my issue isn't even with with him or even Omale and Usher, who in the last 12 months has been doing this across the UK, across the US with his show. I think it's at Vegas. He does it.
Yeah.
I think he's touring the UK soon. They invite these girls on. Chris Brown did it. I went to Chris Brown gig last year.
Chris Breezy did it.
Breezy did it. Yeah, I saw it. It's out of control. My issue is with the women, especially those with partners, that volunteer to go on stage, humiliate themselves, in my opinion, that's what it is, but more importantly, their partners.
Why is your issue with the woman and not with the guy who humiliates the woman?
It's an act. If I'm an R&B artist, if I'm a singer, and part of my act is that I'm all about gal and sex and love and intimate, then that's part of my.
Why is that part of your act? Why does that need? Why are you not just doing what you're there to do, which is to sing, perform? Why does your act have to include embarrassing the woman?
Well, I don't think he's embarrassing the woman. I think the woman's embarrassing herself. He wants a partner to dance with and do his thing with. I don't have an issue with the act. I have an issue with these women who are going up there, like I say, embarrassing themselves. Because for me, if that's my sister, my daughter, my mum, I'm like, what are you doing in front of 10,000 people?
If they're single, would you be okay with it?
If they're single, I think it's still a little bit cringe, but you're only embarrassing yourself. I'm saying this. She's come with her man. She's come with her man, Darren. And I'm like, if you're the guy looks quite young anyway. He looks quite young. He's distraught. He is humiliated in front of not only the 10,000 people in the concert, it's gone viral, Darren. He's doing content with YouTubers now about the incident, so he's making money off of it. So my sympathy is slightly dialed down in that sense. But imagine going to a concert that you've brought your woman to, and Joe comes on, Donnell Jones comes on, also another R&B artist there that I won't name, but and your woman says, bye Darren, I'm gonna go on. No, not on my watch. Not on my watch. So
but it's interesting, I get your view there, but it's interesting that you think they're embarrassing themselves, the women, because
well, maybe they don't think so.
No, but I just, in my mind, I'm like, some women go to like Chocolate City, Magic Mike, with their girlfriends on a night out, they're just having fun.
But Hugh, 50 people see that, max.
No, I know, but it's like, but would I rather my partner be up there with Usher and I'm standing 20 meters away, or with the girls at Chocolate City? That's all I'm saying without me there. I know where I'd rather be, my friend. Getting embarrassed in front of 10,000 people. That's exactly where you're going to find me.
I have to admit,
I don't think they're embarrassing themselves. I don't.
Oh, I do.
I don't think you're embarrassing yourself. I have to say, because
all right, flip it. If that was Beyonce or Rihanna, and I went up there, started, doing the Dougie and doing all kinds of dance moves, I'm embarrassing my woman. I'm clearly embarrassing my woman. She's thinking, or everyone's thinking, well, your guy's got no respect for you. So why is it different the other way around?
Do you feel like, and this is a side point, something that I was thinking about recently, I won't tell you why, but that men do actually, in terms of their personal feelings, this is one thing that I just think, we are kind of seen a little bit by our female partners of having, and this is something that we perpetrate, so it's not me blaming women for this. Men perpetrate the idea that they're hard, they don't have emotions, they don't have feelings. That's the way that we're raised as a society, that boys aren't going to have the same level of emotion or the same level of just don't need the same level of respect for their feelings. So it's all right to just be like,
humiliate a man.
Well, it's not humiliate them, it's just they can take more. It's not like you're trying to go out to humiliate them, but you're like, no, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's not like that. He doesn't care. Like, I'm not going to embarrass him. He's not going to think about it like that. He's not going to care, right? So it's not that they're trying to hurt you. It's just that they don't feel like they'll hurt you because they believe, and this is what I mean, men perpetrate this stereotype that they can handle everything. So suddenly they come down, you're pissed off or you're hurt,
but you get over
but they don't see that coming because you're trying to give out to the world that, like, yeah, I'm a hard man. Like, if anyone says anything to my girl, watch what I do, and then suddenly your girl's up there dancing on a stage having fun. She's not going home with Usher. She's not dumb. She lives in Clacton on End. You know, like, come on, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So to her, she's like, well, when I went up there and I was dancing and it was a once in a lifetime thing, Usher,
it meant nothing.
It doesn't mean anything because
I think it's about respect, though. I just think it comes down to respect. If I'm in a relationship with a woman and she does that, forget even on a concert. If we go out to a party and my girl's dancing and whining with 20 even one other guy in a way that is suggestive and seductive, that for me is not respectable.
You see how we've put Darren in a tough position here.
You've got 30 seconds, Darren.
No, it's not even that. Because me and you, we don't have daughters and we don't have wives.
Okay,
me and you.
Okay, yeah.
Darren has both. So, good luck, Mr. Lewis.
No, I just have an issue with any artist whose act involves humiliating women, calling women on stage and putting them in a state of undress.
They're volunteering. Volunteering, Darren.
Yeah, but you're creating conditions for them to...
No,
come on, Darren. If they don't feel
think so.
humiliated, then how can you say that they've humiliated?
It doesn't matter if they feel humiliated. I just don't feel, as an artist, your act should involve calling women and putting yourself in a situation of that nature with them.
But if your catalogue is all about sex music, then a sexual act on stage is apt.
But Darren, let's go back to the point that he raised at the start, because it was for me from the wrong angle. I would never say it. I wouldn't even see it in the way that Jordan has put it there, in terms of, you know, these women are humiliating themselves or disrespecting their partners, disrespecting themselves. Like, I wouldn't see it like that. I would see it as an adult who's free, consensually up there dancing with someone. Yes, it's kind of sensual, the dancing, but it's not.
So if your woman did it, you wouldn't feel disrespected?
I don't think I would feel.
You would. You'd be like, "What are you doing?"
Because do you know what? I know that my partner. This is going to sound bad, but would enjoy it. Would find it so memorable that they were on stage with Usher, and for them that would be, not that I'm giving them such a terrible life, but it would be a highlight of of their life.
On stage with Usher singing a duet is one thing. Listen, mounting him on a chair and riding him getting bent over.
I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking more she's in the chair, Usher's kind of round her.
Doesn't matter.
I think we should end it there. To be perfectly honest, yeah. If that last bit stays in, baby, I love you. That was the first of hopefully many, many episodes. And like I say, we'll try and keep ourselves together for as long as possible, but we'll also bring you some other, I'm sure, big names, big faces from the world of.
So I'm not a big name
of sport. I said other. I said some other.
You did.
Listen, bro.
I should.
And we'll get more relaxed as well as time goes on, I'm sure. So stay with us for the journey.
Suggest some names as well. Any names that you.
Yes. Now, I was going to say find us on social media, but that would have to be the name of the podcast. So find us on social media rather than the podcast. Find us on social media and suggest a name for this podcast because we haven't thought that far down the road. All right. In the meantime, thanks for listening and we'll see you soon.